All right, everyone, how are you? Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? Thanks for stopping by. On the show this week, I talk with Frank Jasper. Now, Frank was in a movie called Vision Quest that's celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. Yeah, that's right. 40 years ago, that cult classic was released. He played a character named Brian Shute, who was the antagonist in the movie. In my opinion, he was the most important character. We talk a little bit about how he got that part, his early days, what he does now, working with elite athletes of all ages, creating nutritionally specific programs for optimal performance, how he's going to celebrate the 40th anniversary, and he told some great stories along the way. It was a lot of fun getting to know Frank, and I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Let's check it out. All right, man. Tell everyone who you are.
Hello, everyone. I'm Frank Jasper. I played Brian Shute in the movie Vision Quest, and we're coming up on a 40th anniversary of the release of Vision Quest on the 15th of this month. It's crazy.
40 years.
I'm happy to be aboard with Bernie here, and I'm excited to kind of get into it. And he's got some really cool background in how Vision Quest was a part of his life as well, too. So I'm interested to hear that piece as well.
Yeah, man. When I reached out to you and then you hit me up with your number, I fanboyed for a bit before I replied. But before you got the Vision Quest gig, were you involved in wrestling?
Well, I was a wrestler in high school.
Okay.
So I wrestled for 3 years in high school at Coeur d'Alene High School in North Idaho. It's just right across, about 30 minutes. I'm sorry, we got some noise out there. I hope it's not bothering the recording, but so Coeur d'Alene is about 30 minutes away from Spokane. So they're really close to each other. And I went to Coeur d'Alene High and I wrestled there for 3 years. And then my last year, I chose to play tennis indoor with a college team from North Idaho College, and I ended up getting a tennis scholarship. So I kind of left the wrestling kind of thing behind. And then I was at North Idaho for just a semester, and then I left, and I went and became an ironworker for 4 years. And I decided I just wasn't happy where I was, and I wanted to be a bodybuilder. So my dad said, well, you need to make some money, so we'll put you out as an ironworker. So I worked as an ironworker for 4 years at the Hanford nuclear site. And man, that was an education, because, now it's like, I'm just fresh out of high school. You're still in that kind of like where Matthew was. He was not a kid, but not quite a man, trying to find his place, trying to figure out where he fits in the world. What's he, what is it that how far can he push himself? What does he really want to accomplish in life?
Yeah.
And boy, when you go and you work at a man's job, and I want to say that that's a man's job, because I walked out with as an apprentice. 3 of us walked out onto that site as apprentices, and within the 4 years, one of the guys died. And so you go out on that job, and that anything could happen, and you could fall off the wall, you could get smashed. I mean, there were 3 incidences where I was almost killed, and I realized I'm moving to a different crew because I wasn't happy about the way this crew was being run. It was too dangerous.
Yeah.
So I worked for 4 years, and then I said, okay, I know what it is to work hard and to work, and put your life on the line for a job, and I'm going back to school. So 3 days later, I was at Eastern Washington University, signed up for classes, and I got in the athletic training program, and I was bodybuilding. I had already started bodybuilding for the, a few years that I was as an ironworker, and I continued to do that, but just jumped it to the next level. And so when I graduated high school, I weighed 155 pounds. I was not big. I'm a late bloomer. All our family kind of matures later. So it was hard for me to put on muscle and weight, and it's easy for me to lose it. So it took me 5 years to go from 155 to 185 to 190 and I got up to 215 pounds. So, and during those two and a half years at Eastern, I was training 3 days on, 1 day off. I was getting up at 6:30 in the morning. I was going to classes and then lunch and then studied for, or actually went right into the athletic training room until 5, ate dinner, studied for 2 hours, went to the gym, trained for 2 hours, went home, went to bed, got up and did that for 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
And it was a grind, but it was exactly what I wanted to be doing. And so
It
that's
wasn't
where
iron working.
I was, yeah. Well, listen, my dad was an ironworker for 30 years and he made a great life out of it. And I just looked at it and goes like, am I going to see myself at age 50 outside working, because just to give you some idea of the temperature extremes, Hanford is about 25 miles outside of the Tri-Cities in Washington. Washington, it sits right in the middle lower part of Washington State. And so you go outside of the city and it's all desert. And in the summer, one day that we were inside that containment, because what they do is they dig a hole out there in the sand and then they start building. They probably go 180 to 300 feet down, and then they start building up to about 90 feet, and then they push the sand in, and they build up another 90 feet, push the sand in. So you're out in the middle of the desert in a pit with sand around you and rebar, because it's all concrete and rebar, and the sun's beating down. And one day the high was 134 degrees. And so you have that where you can't even, if you touch the iron, the rebar with your bare hand, it will actually burn and blister your hand.
Wow.
That's how hot it got. And then in the winter would get down below zero. And so now you're working in below zero temperatures with, snow and everything. And so, I did that for 4 years and was like, wow, that's a motivation to get you back into school.
Yeah.
To make those, like, oh, I'm going to be working indoors. I'm going to find a degree where I'm going to be indoors working in through temperature controlled things that I can manage and that I can be, comfortable in. But it was a real wake up call, real lessons. I mean, I watched how hard these guys worked. I mean, they're animals. They are just tough as nails.
Yeah. Is it similar to going into Texas, the oil fields?
Yeah.
Really, a lot of those guys.
Have you seen The Landowner or
Billy Bob Thornton?
Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah, that's a great show, man.
Oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite shows. He is brilliant in that. And yes, those guys that are working those hard rigs, very much like ironworkers. Anything could happen. Things could snap, could break, fall on you. Like the pipes did.
Yeah. And so your bodybuilding in college. Did you audition or did you see this, or was it something you were, or did they approach you about this role?
As an athletic trainer, we work with different teams throughout different semesters, and so I was assigned to the wrestling team that particular semester. And I'm sitting in there watching the practice. You sit in practices and make sure if somebody gets hurt, you're right there. And this one guy came in that was wrestling on the team, but then got a role in the movie Vision Quest, and he had extras. He was in the school scenes, the classroom scenes. He was on the wrestling team, and he came in and was sitting there talking to me, and he says, "Hey, I'm in this movie," and I said, "Oh yeah, I heard about that." And he goes, "Yeah, well, you know what? They're still looking for somebody. They're looking for somebody about 6 foot tall, muscular build that can wrestle." He goes, "That's you. You got to go for this. You got to check this out." And I'm like, "Listen, I had no experience. I've had no experience in acting." And I was kind of like, I don't know. He goes, "No, they pay really well. You get paid to wrestle." And I'm thinking, okay, this will be great because I'm paying for my own education. I'll go. I'll be an extra in the background, and I'll get paid so I can help pay for my school, and I'll watch and see how a movie gets made. That's interesting to me. He didn't tell me they had any lines. He didn't tell me any. I probably would not have shown up, tell you the truth. But he did convince me to go. And like 3 days later, we were able to figure out a time. And I go in to the hotel where the company's working out of, the filming crew's working out of. And this small about 5'2", 5'3", casting director. She looks like, kind of grandma type almost. And she goes, okay, so here, and she hands me some paper. She goes, these are the sides. I want you to look them over, and then we're gonna read. I'm like, oh my God. Rick never told me that this was gonna involve any kind of, I was gonna have to be speaking lines and memorizing lines and things like that. So took a deep breath, and we read the lines. And yeah, I've never done this before, and I'm kind of nervous. I don't, I'm really a fish out of water here. So I got nervous and I missed a line, and I kind of laughed because I was nervous. And she looked at me and she stopped, stared me right in the eye, and she says, "We're looking for intensity here. If you make a mistake, you just continue on as if nothing happened. Got it?" I'm like, "Yeah, got it." So we ran the lines again. She goes, "Okay." She gets on the phone, Harold Becker, and he says, "Yeah, I got to see him." So we walked out of her office, around down the hallway and around to his office. Walk in there and he looks at me. He goes, "You know the lines now." And he takes the sides out of my hand. Now I've read them like 2 or 3 times. They're not huge long monologues, but it's like, have you ever done them? it's like so for some reason I just was like, I didn't even think twice. He started doing the lines, I did the lines back, and I walked out of there. I don't even remember what happened. But apparently I got through the scene because he goes, "Okay, now we got to see if he can wrestle." So I mean, I had to go wrestle for a cash stone. And I hadn't wrestled in about 3 years. I did wrestle after high school, which I wrestled while I was in the Tri-Cities because they did shut down the nuclear reactors for a period of time. So I was on unemployment. And my brother, who's 2 years younger, a friend of his, had a scholarship as a wrestler there in Pasco. And so he needed somebody at his weight. And at that time, I weighed 192, and that was his weight. So I got to train with the team for that season. So it had been just like, yeah, a couple of years, and then I'd gone to Eastern Washington. So
Yeah.
I had recently kind of rolled around and had some ideas. So, I passed the litmus test at the wrestling practice, and Cash Stone is the guy that ran all the practices. He was a coach at Meade, Washington for 30 to 40 years. Extraordinary guy. Anyway, he says, "Yeah, you got what it takes, kid." And then I had another audition to do with the director. I had to show up and shave my mustache. I had like a 70s mustache back in the day, and I had the shaded glasses. And anyway, so they wanted to make sure I'd look young enough. And so I had blondish hair and a fair look. So I looked pretty young. I was 26. Matthew was 26. Linda Fiorentino was 27. So we all had a younger look anyway. So it pretty much worked. And then the final thing that had to happen was I found out that the producers, John Peter and Peter Goober and Nancy Klopper, were flying a guy down from LA. Now, what happened is they had cast this role twice before, Nancy Klopper did. Neither one of those guys worked. They're 2.5 weeks away from shooting the first scene in the movie. And they still hadn't found their shoot. They're actually their main antagonist to the main character.
Yeah.
And so they flew a guy down. And my casting director said, "Okay, here's what's happening. Producers like this guy. The Harold Becker likes you. You've got to do the scene and prove to the producers that you're the guy." And so I show up. She takes me over, and before we walk into Harold Becker's office, he steps out and meets us in the hallway. And he goes, "Okay, when you come in here, kid, I want you to be intense the entire time. Got it?" And he smacks me in the face, and I gritted my teeth, and I turned around and I go, "Got it." He goes, "That's what I want." It's like, like he just knew what to do to get me inspired. He was one of those guys that just knew what it took. So I step into the room and I take my shirt off, and there's a woman in front that I'm reading these lines with, and the producers are back behind, and she's reading a line to me. So I'm being this like tough guy, and this small petite woman is reading these lines back to me. And and every time I say my line, she does this. She goes, rolls her eyes, right? I'm thinking like, okay, I just got to get through this. And I stayed in on focus. I stayed, in character, and I walked out and I said to my casting director, like, "Hey, did I look ridiculous?" And she goes, "No, why?" I said, "Well, every time I did a line with this Nancy Klopper, she just kind of rolled her eyes and just kind of like almost shook her head." She goes, "No, no, no. She had cast that role twice before. They didn't work out. She's trying to like bring this guy she wants in there. She was trying to trip you up."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Man, this is like sneaky stuff, man." And so I guess he must have gone in, or I don't know if he went in before me to do the lines. And they said, okay, we got to see if he can wrestle. So we all go to the site where they're shooting some scenes. They had things set up and they had a mat and they had lights and they were shooting some scene away. So they stopped production and then they all came and circled around the mat. And, this guy named Frank Zagarino and I got on the mat. We had our wrestling gear on and we had kind of like a minor like wrestle off, and the coach would call out, things like a duck under, a drag, fireman's carry, single leg, double leg, and we had to go back and forth really fast, and we finished. And then about 5, 10 minutes later, John Peters comes over and he goes, "Okay, kid, you got the role." And it was like, that's how I got the role. It was crazy, right?
Yeah. Do you know who that other guy was that they wanted? Was he an LA guy or a?
Yeah. Frank Zagarino is the guy, and he had done other movies, so he was an actor,
Yeah.
and he was in great shape. He was really cut. He was more cut than I was. I was just big. I weighed 215 pounds. So I mean, I'm supposed to play a 168-pound wrestler,
High school
and
wrestler.
high school wrestler. So that began the journey.
Yeah.
And I ended up dropping 25 pounds in 2.5 weeks to shoot. So I went from this bulking bodybuilding, diet and training to like cutting super hard. Like I used to have 5 platefuls of food because I would eat at the Commons at like all you could eat at the Eastern Washington University. And so breakfast, I would have 5 platefuls of food. I would do like plateful of eggs, plateful of, pancakes, plateful more of eggs. I would force myself, and I would take raw or like hard-boiled eggs and like stuff them in my pockets to have later because my goal was like, okay, I got to get like 12 eggs in a day. I got to get a dozen eggs in a day, that protein, right? And I did that like at every meal. And so when I went to cut, it was like that all went away. And I had egg whites for breakfast. I had tuna on top of like just salad, just some greens and a squeeze of lemon. And then I didn't eat dinner. I got on an exercise cycle and rode for an hour,
Wow.
wearing sweats and everything. And it just burned me down big time.
So the
So
scene in the movie where Loudon is wearing the rubber suit and he's trying to explain why he's wearing it. Did you ever have to do any of that in your cuts?
I did. I didn't wear a rubber suit, but like I said, I got on that bike and I was in a sweats with a hoodie and I rode for an hour straight, just sweating like a madman, like he says. I'm sweating like a madman.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I cut so hard that you actually have to, because you don't have any food supply, nutrients in the body, your body starts breaking down your muscle tissue for energy. And I could feel my delts. That's where I felt it the most. They would just ache because they were actually being catabolized so that I would have enough energy to like get through the day.
Yeah. And for those in the know, man, Vision Quest to me is quite possibly the greatest wrestling movie, proper wrestling, ever made. It's a cult classic. When you watch it, like you said, your character doesn't have a lot of lines, but in a lot of ways, Shoot is the main character. Everyone mentions him in the movie. Every person on camera mentions your name,
Uh-huh.
you know. Uh, and the few times that you see you, it's very intense, very intimidating, when he shows up at Loudon's match and he's like, "You're a bleeder." But
Yeah, they did a beautiful job of it's like if you think about it, it's like, what do you fear? You fear the things you don't know more than the fears that you do know. So if you see somebody, but if you, that's one thing. But if you hear about somebody and you just keep hearing about him, and legends grow, as you know, like
Yeah.
legends grow, like, oh, this guy was doing stuff to fireplaces. His dad had to use a shocker to keep him from, having
Yeah.
sex with the fireplace. I mean, these crazy kind of stories would develop, and so the great unknown, like, what is this guy? And he's just a beast. He can't be stopped. Nobody's beating him. He's a two-time state champion. He hasn't lost. He's even tougher this year.
Yeah.
And so that's why we hear all throughout the beginning of the movie and the danger that this guy possesses. I mean, even the coach goes, shoot. Nobody wants to wrestle. Shoot. It's like it's like Voldemort is in the building,
Exactly.
Um, and
It,
so
it
that scene where we get introduced to my character for the first time is the log scene. And I mean, how cool is that they came up with that as a concept?
I
I
know,
mean,
right?
yeah, it's just brilliant,
And
and
I think I told you on our phone call, when he's like, "You think you'll make the weight?" He goes, "I'm gonna try." And then shoot turns as he's turning around with the log, he's like, "I hope you do." Like it's such a classic line, and then he starts walking down with this log, you know.
like he has no time, for this. He's just like, okay, great, kid. I can't wait to get you on the mat because I'm gonna just smash you. I'm gonna
Yeah,
destroy you. In his mind, he's like, this log, this log is like a toothpick, dude. And I'm
yeah,
throwing it around. You're nothing, man. I can't wait to get you on the mat.
yeah.
That mentality comes through just those few little lines.
And they managed to throw Harold Becker managed to throw in a few stories in this movie. The main character is the wrestling. That's the main character. But he manages to throw in uh Linda Fiorentino and Matthew Modine's kind of tryst. The teacher, his English teacher, your story, Cooch's story, like they're all stories within this movie, but it doesn't. I mean, in your typical 80s movie, yeah, there's all these like little conflicts or whatever,
Yeah, subplots, things like that going on.
but he never takes your attention away from what that movie is about. He has a goal. He's going to wrestle this guy. He's going to beat him. You know.
But so I go do appearances. I have been for like the past 5, 6 years to represent Shoot and Vision Quest because the wrestling community is, that is their movie, as you said. Um, and they just love the character. Some people are Swain fans, some are Shoot fans, but they all love Vision Quest, and the soundtrack is insane. As a
We're going
musician,
to
I
get
think,
to that.
oh man, yeah. And then the fact that it's like when I would go after 30 years, like I stepped away from it all for like 30 years, and then I came back to the wrestling community. And so when I would go to an appearance and they're showing the movie, I'm thinking like I'm kind of dreading like, man, is this thing gonna hold up okay? It's like it was done in the 80s. And then the movie gets into and the pacing is what I noticed. Like it's pacing. They don't just kind of stall around. There's always something going on, and they pace it really well. And so, like they don't, like you said, they don't take their eye off of this, but the main thought through line. But he has these other discoveries that, like, what kids these days are still trying to figure out, like, where's my place in the circle, and am I a man if I don't have sex? Am I a man now that I have sex? What does that
Yeah.
mean? I mean, what are the relationship with men and women? How do I navigate that? And
And for the
all those
time, he
questions.
threw in a very controversial scene in the very beginning when the guy's doing Tai Chi and makes a pass at Loudon in the hotel.
Yeah,
Like, time you didn't see a lot of that in those movies. Guy tried to grab my junk.
yeah. And
How'd you
so
feel? And he's like,
They,
I don't know.
I thought they were like very ahead of their time
Yeah.
in a lot of areas because he talked about that. He talked about priapism, which is like an erection you just won't go down. He talked about women's parts and the coos and the vagina and like he's studying about how women have power over him. I mean,
The
all
size
these
of the
like
hands when he's like,
he's like smelling her underwear. I mean,
oh
all
my
these
God.
things that like you think that like back in the 80s, was that okay? It was like such a forward thinking, poignant moments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uncomfortable. Some of them are very uncomfortable. Some of them are very revealing. but it's just brilliant how they bring up all these, and I think that's why it's endured, because it does give you a sense of like, well, what is my life about? What is this? How am I? And what are I? How do I navigate through all these life decisions and choices?
Yeah. So you mentioned the soundtrack. Like this movie came out in 85. I think it was Pretty in Pink came out in 86, Breakfast Club 85. And you have songs that kind of define those movies. You guys had a soundtrack that was just amazing. And you told me a story the other day because Madonna plays a role, a
Yeah.
very tiny role in this movie. Crazy for You is on the soundtrack. Journey, John Waite.
Oh
But
man.
the story you told me about, the promotion overseas for the movie, that rather than it say like Matthew Modine and Linda Fiorentino's Matthew Modine and Madonna on the poster.
Well, I sent I just I sent you a little that is the it says so they so in Europe they didn't promote it as Vision Quest, they wrote it as Crazy for You, because when we started filming, and that was in November of like 83, I want to say, and Madonna was unknown. And Harold Becker has such a great eye. He was like, that's the woman I want to do the bar scene. And he pulled her out of New York, brought her there to do this bar scene. And my friend John Bettis and his partner wrote Crazy for You just for Vision Quest, the movie. They were given the script and they had to come up with here's the sound, here's the love song that they're going to put out. And so I wasn't at the filming, but they shot that scene in the bar, and it was probably like 30 to 40 seconds. Maybe she was on there.
Yeah.
And then we shot Vision Quest for 10 weeks. And then the shooting schedule was done. I went back to school. And then 3 months later, they were like, oh, we got one more scene to do. And because they had kind of put it together, they thought, oh, we need something else here to fill in. So I flew to LA, we shot that scene. I went back to school, back to classes, and back to bodybuilding. And then again, 3 months later, I get another call. They go, oh, we got one more scene. And so again, it took like the 10 weeks of shooting, then a break of like over 3 months, and then another scene, another break of over 3 months. Finally, they put it together and it was released then the following year. And in that time frame, Madonna went from an unknown to a superstar. And so, like I said, I sent you that poster for the movie, and it says, you know, Madonna starring in, Vision Quest. I'm like, okay, that's pretty funny though.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it shows you the marketing, how they want to do it. Once the movie came out, man, how did you think, okay, this is my thing, I'm gonna do this? Or were you like, oh, that was fun, I'm gonna keep being who I am?
My experience was like, I didn't even, as you know, I had no idea that I even had speaking role.
Yeah.
And then after I got the speaking role, I had like, okay, it's a good role. It's an important role. It's antagonist, the main character. Okay, fine. But I was done as soon as the movie was done. But I had made a commitment that I was going to give it everything again, 110%, and make the wrestler, shoot to be the most intense, aggressive, biggest challenge of anybody. It's like, Rocky's big challenge. He's got to. So you wanted to set that, and you wanted to represent wrestlers in general. So I said, I'm giving it all, and I want people to see that wrestling is a lot more than just two guys scrapping around a little bit. There's a dynamics. There's some mentality stuff. There's like all the stuff they do before they get on the mat, all the wrestling that you got to see behind the scenes in the wrestling room, and all the commitments that you make as far as food and water and working out and the challenges that ensue and that really are big hurdles to overcome. And so, yeah, I gave it everything, and then I was like, okay, I'm done. And I went back to school. I took the money, helped me with my education. When the movie came out, I got a call from an agency out of New York, APA, And at the premiere, they said, "Oh, they liked my work." They said, "Hey, we liked your work. We'd like to represent you. I know you're on the West Coast. We got a place in LA. Would you go and interview and consider signing with us?" So I was like, I hadn't thought about it.
Yeah.
And so my brother was in LA, my sister was in LA, so it was like an easy transition. So I flew to LA and I went to I did, their interview with their agent. And I ended up actually signing with a different agency. And I said, well, okay, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. I can go back. I had finished all my athletic training courses. I had 4,000 hours in the athletic training room were done. The major, all my pre-med courses were all done. And I just had to finish the rest of my minor, which was just teaching K through 12, So I said, well, it'd be easy for me to come back and finish this degree if I choose to. But if I don't take this opportunity, I'll probably regret it.
Yeah.
So I put everything I owned and it all fit. And I had a 280ZX at the time because I was an ironworker, and the ironworker had a decent, wage, so I bought a nice car.
But you put it all in that, you didn't own much.
Exactly. It's a two-seater, and that's it. I drove to LA. I slept on the floor of my brother's room. He had a house with a group of guys, and I slept on the floor in a sleeping bag until I could get my own place. I signed up for acting classes. I got an agent. I got I got a commercial agent. I got a print agent. I started going out on auditions. I started going to acting classes because I had no experience. And I took classes from Monday through Friday from 6 to midnight for 3 years total. And I loved it. I loved acting. I loved that process. I looked at it as my vision quest because that opened me up in so many different ways, because in acting classes, you can't be stuck and not being able to express anger or laughter or some of these things. And I had shut down a lot from the traumas that I had when I was younger. And, we all come from that. Like I came from, Pacific Northwest, and, men were men,
Yeah.
and, everybody chewed tobacco and wore flannel shirts and logging boots, so this was an eye-opening.
No time for feelings.
Right? Right. Unless you got drunk and then everybody had feelings, that's how it came out.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, so I was in this journey. It was like a vision quest to really explore everything for myself, and in doing so, also get into the acting part. And I actually got I did pretty good. I got a national commercial, my first one I went out for. I got a small bit in a TV show. I did a kind of a schlocky, film, and I was doing some modeling stuff down in downtown LA, and that was helping. And I actually got a role in the live action production of Conan the Barbarian up at Universal Studio Tours. Do you remember the Conan Barbarian movies?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Guess who was my idol? Guess that was the reason that I got into bodybuilding? Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, he was the bomb. I mean, he was the guy. Let's face it. Anyway, I had always like, oh, I want to be a bodybuilder, and I want to go to LA, and I want to that whole thing, and I ended up being in LA, but I was doing the acting thing primarily. But anyway, this was a great show. I didn't play Conan. I played one of the double swordsmen. And so we would have 3 or 4 shows during the day. There'd be a group of about 3,500 people would come in, lights would dim, and there would be like a 15-minute show of action adventure and fighting and sword play. And a dragon came out with fire. And I thought it was actually really cool. There was a transformation that happened between young Conan that was running around the stage, and then was threatened by this big evil guy, ran out onto this place where these rocks were in this moat right in front of everybody, and then and he would pull the sword out and he would hold it straight up, and all of a sudden this like white wind would blow up around him, and then it would drop, and then there would be the full-grown Conan. So it went from the kid to the adult, and then he was in like the young Conan had all like long sleeves and long pants and stuff, but when it transitioned, he had his upper, body exposed and just had like bands around his arm, and he was in a loincloth, and he was like a bodybuilder that stepped out. And it was so quick, and it was you couldn't tell how that happened, but it was like right next to each other. They would stand on this thing, and one would pop up and the other would go down, and they were covered in this white, this powerful white mist blowing up, so you couldn't see it. So that transformation to me was like the coolest thing on that set, that we did. But I did that for 2.5 years. I loved doing it. The people were fun to perform for, and it was just great practice to always be working.
Yeah. You mentioned that after your time in Hollywood and doing that, you started studying Oriental medicine. What is that?
So, because I had a background in what I call the healing of, athletic training, I was always helping athletes to heal and do stuff like that. But I was getting now into meditation and energy work and all this stuff. So I thought, if I'm going to go back into the healing arts, which one of the healing arts is more aligned to where I'm at this point?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about chiropractic, and at that time it was just physical manipulation. And I thought about some other things, and I said, no, acupuncture, because they deal with energetic meridians and balancing the body's energy and chi and through manipulation on the needles. And I thought, well, I'll just take a class in acupuncture and go become an acupuncturist. Well, it's a master's degree in Oriental medicine, and the class, the university I went to was Yosan University in Santa Monica at the time, run by the Dao and Mao Ni. They were like 38 generation Chinese healers from China. So it was, I considered, the best form of education outside of China at the time. And so we got the real insights into how acupuncture is done in China. And it took 5 years for me to get my master's degree in Oriental medicine. And I got a state license and a national license. My wife and I opened up a clinic in Pacific Palisades for health, fitness, and longevity called Osani Holistic Healthcare. And we did that for 27 years. Pacific Palisades, by the way, which just burned to the ground.
Yeah.
And we lived in Pacific Palisades for over 30 years. Our office, gone. Every house that we lived in, because we lived in about 3 or 4 houses and rented, and then we bought a townhouse up in the Highlands. All of those burned to the ground.
Oh.
We have so many friends that are homeless, that lost everything. I mean, it's heart-wrenching, and it's like it's sad. It's like there was some sweetness to the village and the people that lived there, and so it's really hard to say. It's just devastating, and it's like my wife cried, of course, and but it was I loved living in Pacific Palisades. We moved about 4 years ago, and we now live in Carmel, California. And so I kind of transitioned from doing primarily acupuncture and some nutrition to doing primarily focusing on nutrition for elite athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started working with different wrestlers because I wasn't satisfied. I didn't like the way that they were cutting weight to then try and go out. They would starve themselves, basically what I did for Vision Quest. They would starve themselves, dehydrate themselves, overtrain, and then try and get ready and wrestle in a tournament that next day. And it just makes no sense to me that you can't perform at your best if you've depleted the body, you've stressed the body, you've dehydrated the body, you've overtrained the body. How are you going to really perform at the next level? So I started working with several athletes and looking at changing how we were cutting weight to a healthier weight. And I worked with this one kid, Nick Siriano. He was a 4-time state champion out in New Jersey. He won a national title for Rutgers, their first one. And then he came out to Pacific Palisades. An interesting story. His parents would play Vision Quest 3 or 4 days a week on a loop at their house. And so he was inundated with Vision Quest. And so there was some kind of like cosmic connection. I believe that there's no
accidents.
There's no like things that just happen. I mean, they do happen, but there's reasons why and there's energetic things that pull us together. you and I, like, who knows how we would have met other
Yeah.
than, but there's a reason. And I trust that. And after talking with you, I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to do a podcast with Bernie. He's a cool dude. I
Thank you.
like Bernie.
Thank you.
Uh, and, um, anyway, so he came into my clinic and got a treatment. Nick Suriano, his family came and were visiting, the West Coast. And afterwards he goes, hey, I'd really like you to work with me on my nutrition and stuff like that. So I started working with him and we tried different things nutritionally. We found certain things that worked, certain things that didn't. We got it down to being a fat adapted athlete and going in and out of ketosis, not staying in ketosis. I mean, it's very technical. I won't bore everybody with that at this point. But he ended up winning in 2022. I was there. He won the NCAA, 125-pound title, national title. He was wrestling from Michigan at the time. It was on the 19th of March, which was my birthday and his mother's birthday. Let's see again, like a synchronicity.
Yeah.
Like you can't get away from this. You just like if you just notice things that are going on and why certain people come into your life and then just the fact that he wins this on my birthday and his mom's birthday. I just thought that was kind of a very cool thing. And I kept working with him. He won the Pan Am Games. He won a couple overseas events, and then we last year he went. He and I went to the Olympic trials. Now he lost in the second round. It was a tough loss. I didn't like the way he cut. Did the flush right before he did a different thing than what we had done before, and I didn't like it because I thought it kind of depleted him somewhat. But he still was, he was a monster on the mat, and just unfortunately that he lost that match. It was so close, and so he could have been really possibly representing us for the Olympics. Now, I got to have that experience. I got to be in the training room in the back where they're all warming up at the Olympic trials. To me, that's a bucket list thing.
Yeah.
Going to the NCAAs, that's like Super Bowl for wrestling, right? Just like it is for football. It's kind of like their NCAA national championship. That's their Super Bowl. NCAA national wrestling, that's their Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
I got to go to that with him, and I got to go to the Olympic trials. So I thank him for including me and having a part of that, being a part of that. And it was very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on, man.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I had no idea. We didn't even talk about that the other day.
Yeah. Now I actually work with kids in high school that are lightweight. I work with middleweights. I work with college athletes, D1. I've actually even worked with masters athletes, which means people over 25 and beyond. And the dietary things that I'm recommending, the nutrients I'm recommending, the stepping it in, all works. It works all across the board. What age group? Now it's not going to work for everybody, but I've seen it work from young high school lightweights to heavyweights to seniors. So I'm pretty confident into this is the way we should really be kind of addressing and prepping into these matches and tournaments.
And that's what you're doing now.
That's what I do for athletes across the country.
Right on, man. Right on.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, it's coming up on the 40th anniversary of Vision Quest. You've been involved with showing up at signings and so forth for how many years now?
About 5-6 years.
5-6 years.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything special? Are they doing anything special for the 40th anniversary?
So there's I'm set to do an interview on Monday, and it's they're reaching out to certain actors in the film, and I'm not sure what they're going to put together. I don't know that if it's going to be a video, a clip, or if it's just going to be written with some things that they put on next to it and it's going to be published. I'm not sure. I just know that they've reached out to me, and I'm going to be a part of the voice of, the 40th anniversary of Vision Quest. And I have actually got bookings all throughout the year right now because I look at it as this is the 40th anniversary year.
Yeah.
It's like that was when it was released, but this was our 40th anniversary. So I'm running around the country, kind of just very excited about it. And I just think that Vision Quest is such an extraordinary film, and it stood up over time, and there's still more to be done there. As a matter of fact, I think we talked about this, but about 3-4 years ago, I met a producer online on Facebook, and he was a big Vision Quest fan. He actually wrestled, and his sons wrestle, and he runs a club out in New Jersey, and he's a producer. And he was a big fan of Vision Quest. He tried to actually get a Vision Quest 2 done in Hollywood, but that was when the writer's strike hit, so it all went away. And so we talked about how we can best move this forward now. And we decided, like, okay, a series would be more appropriate at this point. We could get it done quickly. And we're going to do a similar format that they did in Cobra Kai, which is like 30 years later. Let's check in on what happened. What happened to Matthew after that big match? What happened to Shoot after? We know very little about Shoot, his background.
Yeah.
We just know that he's a beast, and he was like undefeated. So did this destroy him? What happened to him? Did he continue? Did he double down like some wrestlers that, like, if they lose a match, it's like, they get all that, even puts more, fire, to them, and they just come back even stronger. So we don't know, but the series that we wrote answers all those questions, and we get to kind of explore some of the things that we didn't know about, and now we are going to explore and expose. And so I think it's really interesting. So we've got that written, and we're in the process of trying to get that made at some point.
I know that'd be I can almost see it. I can almost see, well, the storyline. It's such a great movie, and I'm surprised that it's not. I mean, it is a cult classic. It's one of those movies that's found its way in pretty much every generation. And I always say, for people in the known, you mentioned Visit Quest. People hear Only the Young by Journey, and they picture Loudon Swain running.
That's silver in a silver suit across the bridge in Spokane, Washington.
Yeah. So that's what I picture when I hear that song, because it's so ingrained in my head from when I was younger. And it was so good to meet you.
So tell me you're in the music business. You work for Duran. You've been with Duran Duran forever.
I've been with them for 15 years.
Wow, that's forever in the music industry.
By trade, I'm a guitar bass tech. So I work on guitars, and I always say I'm a caddy to the artist. I'm his caddy. But I've been a bass tech when I started working for Duran Duran. So when I get a call now, if they're just looking for a bass tech, it's good for me, because they have it in the budget to just hire a guy to look out for the basses. So I've kind of been labeled as a bass tech in this industry, but I do guitar work too. But I've worked for Duran Duran for 15 years. I like it. It's cool.
Yeah, music it cuts across, like I say, it's the universal language, right? So they were able to capture the 80s feel, and it's like I just before I went on, I go, I have to like click on some of the clips from this just so I get that sense again of what it was like to, the music and the movie to connected, and it's still, I get chills. It's like it takes me to another place, as music can. And it's interesting that a lot of 80s right now is being redone and repackaged, and it's like it's become very popular, very retro. I just find that fascinating. That they captured something that I can actually hear the lyrics and the songs. Things that matter to me is like I like to kind of hear what the artist is singing or saying, and that it actually means something, and as well. So I thought that they nailed it with the soundtrack. It's inspirational. It gets you pumped up. When you hear Lunatic Fringe, I mean, that just is like that first opening sound where it's just eerie,
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? I looked up that clip of Michael Chandler that you told me about.
Oh yeah.
Where he recreates the Loudon scene, and I found a clip of them doing it side by side.
Wow.
It's really cool. I'll send it to you.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. When you hear that, that's what you see. You see Loudon rolling, and I don't know the terms, but
doing sit outs and things like that. And I love that I've seen different remakes of different scenes, you know, from the little kids that are doing the stadium scene to actually Princeton, actually, for their wrestling season one year, did a promo and they did the scene from Vision Quest, and they're like 190 pounder played my role. And they had different guys play the other roles, and they did it as a promo thing for their wrestling season. And I thought, damn, this is about the best version of that I've seen, you know.
Yeah.
So
So the movie has made an impact, man. You know, um, uh, for those in the know. But I think more people, like I'm sure you run into people all the time, you know, that this movie really was important to them or still is important to them.
one of, you know, so here's the interesting thing. I got to say a couple of things about that. One is I'm always fascinated when people who aren't even into wrestling have fallen in love with Vision Quest, you know. And so that thing is like one person I ran into at the 30th, I said, "Oh yeah, or did you know somebody who wrestled? Did you?" She goes, "No, I'm a marathon runner, but I so resonated to the whole concept,
Yeah.
you know, of what Matthew did in order to get to where he needed to go." And it was like, wow. So that reached beyond just the wrestling concept and what it took. It was just the wrestling was the background in which you drop all these issues into. And it was great look into wrestling, but you didn't have to just be a wrestler to appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, you know who Dana White is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much everybody in the United States probably knows who Dana White is. So he was on a podcast, and the podcast guy said, like, you know, they were talking and they discussed like, well, which movie impacted you the most out of every movie you've ever seen? And Dana White didn't even think, I mean, didn't even pause. He goes, Vision Quest. And said, Vision Quest changed my life, man. And he said, like, you know, he's running these businesses, and it's UFC and MMA now combined, and it's like WWE stuff. I mean, it's like the guy is insane how he's like all over the world doing promoting and doing these things. And he said, I heard they had a 30th anniversary, you know, and he said, I found out afterwards that they did a 30th anniversary. He says, if I would have known, I would have dropped everything, rescheduled everything, and just gone there.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. So you know, yes, I've been really fortunate enough to hear and get feedback from like the military guys that were like, yes, it got me through the Citadel and through, you know, 3 tours in Iraq. And I'm just thinking, wow, this is like, if this helps people get through things and inspires them, that's the kind of movies I want to make.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the kind of things I want to be exposed to, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And you know, I can't say it enough how good the movie is and what an you know, I just rewatched it the other day when when we talk, and it's still, man, I still, as the credits are rolling, I'm smiling. Like it's such a good movie. Such a, of course, the ending, Swain Loudon's gonna win. You know he's gonna win, but I don't want to ruin it for anyone. The movie's only been out since '85.
Listen, if they haven't seen it by now, tough.
So
So you know the guy that actually wrote the book Vision Quest, his name is Terry Davis. He was actually a writer from the Pacific Northwest, and then he went on to like teach writing. He actually wrote Vision Quest, and in the book ended when Matthew opened the thing to go out onto the mat.
So you
That was
don't
it.
know if he wins or not.
You don't know. So then in your mind, you're going to decide, oh, like he got crap beat out of him, but at least he got on the mat with this guy. He did what he said he was going to do, or he beat the guy. That was extraordinary. Yeah, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
You can decide.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting that Hollywood, of course, they want to have that rocky ending.
Yeah.
So they had to do that.
That's
So,
what I like about Darren Aronofsky. A couple of the movie The Whale,
Yeah.
I don't know how he ends it, the guy is when he stands up and walks over. And the movie The Wrestler, when Mickey Rourke he ends it when he's jumping off the top rope. You don't know if he dies of that heart attack. You don't know if he,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That type
I
of
don't. I hate it when it's just like you said, like, oh no, you kind of know this is where this is going to go. I don't like that. I mean, they did a nice job with it. They kind of wrapped it up, and just so you know, in the filming, when at the end when Matthew's on their shoulders and he throws his headgear up and he just catches this towel, and the towel just gets suspended right there, and they stop the photo. It's kind of like those moments were magical. They just happen. And so sometimes when you're making a movie, like magic happens when you set the scene.
Yeah.
And so I thought that we were able to set the scene, and my character and his character got to get this big match underneath their belt, and it was back and forth for a while. You didn't know, and it was super close. And so I think there was still some drama, even though you kind of knew where this was going.
Yeah. Well, you also you've embraced this character. You have a website called shootshirts.com, and of course,
There's a shirt. It looks great.
You were kind enough to send me one, and you're wearing the same shirt. Is this something that has anyone tried to stop you? Any copyright thing?
Well, it's my image and likeness, and Warner Brothers has not said anything to me. And by the way, there's been other entities out there that have actually taken the name Vision Quest and the photos from the film and put it on singlets and different things. That it would, like, if they're going to go after somebody, it'll be those people, But so far it's been like so the reason that the shirts came about is that I hadn't been around wrestling for over 30 years, and then we did the anniversary, and my friend reached out to me, who his name is Scott Glab, and he coaches, or did coach at the time, at Santa Ana. And believe it or not, Scott was one of the wrestlers who was in the wrestling room in Eastern Washington University when I was the athletic trainer there. So it's like this full circle thing where, like, Scott's reaching out to me and says, "Hey, I do this big tournament, and we'd like you to come and give away, medals and stuff to the winners." And I said, "Okay." And so that was like 30 years later, because I just had stepped away from that whole thing. And after I did that, USA Wrestling had reached out to me and said, "Will you help promote the World Wrestling Cup that was being held in Los Angeles?" And I said, "Absolutely. I want to support wrestling because, football, basketball, baseball, even maybe a little bit, but football and basketball get all the attention and all the ups and all the coverage and all this. And so, whatever I can do to raise the sport, support the sport, I want to do." And so my wife and I talked about this, and like, okay, are we just going to sit there under a canopy and just say hi to people, or we actually need to have something there so that people will see and get interested? And so we came up, my brother actually said, "You should sell shirts." And so we met a graphic artist. We adjusted the photo and did all that stuff and got the shirts made, and we started selling shirts at that time. And so that's what I would take photos with me, and I take shirts with me when I go on these appearances.
Right on, man. Well, I love mine. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, the feel of it was really important to us.
Yeah, soft.
It's like they say it's the most expensive, comedy. It's a tri-blend.
Tri-blend, yeah.
And so, like, we looked at the pure cotton ones, but they were really blocky, and they kind of they just don't hang right as soon as you wash them once or twice. I mean, we really put some thought and intention, because I wanted people to go, "This is comfortable. I'm going to wear this. I don't just have to wear this to a wrestling match, or I can wear it while they're training because it's super comfortable. It wears really well." And so it's kind of a talking point. Some people,
people will, like you said, it'll get a conversation started.
So it'll be interesting, Bert. You have to let me know, because there's some people that will go, "Are you religious?" Because I never thought about that. I never thought about it. It's just like, I'm just taking this picture from the movie, of me, and I
like looking at yours right now from the frame. It just it looks a little religious.
Yeah, and we're religious wrestlers, and there's a lot of religious wrestlers, by the way. So good work.
Well, Frank, thank you so much, man, for taking the time to talk to me. I hope this relationship continues after this, because I think you're a fucking cool guy. And I enjoyed our conversation the other day. I really enjoyed it today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, it was fun and it was good. We're coming up on the 40th anniversary, so it was fun to do this. And I just want to like support your podcast because I know it's a thing of love, and you give people space to kind of like share stuff, and I appreciate you and your time. I just because I'm all about health, fitness, and longevity, one of the things I want to tell people is if I could say anything to you right off the bat is one, just please stop drinking, municipal water. There's, the fluoride in it it destroys nerve endings and it makes people stupid. They found that it correlates with the higher the fluoridity in the water, the lower the IQ and the focus and the intention of that. So get that out of your system. Find some place that has filtered water. Get a filter on. It could be as simple as a Brita filter. I have a whole machine that takes out all the heavy metals because there's not just fluoride in there. There's chloramine, there's arsenic and lead and the heavy metals. And so find a way to get that out of your system. Your body is over 80% water. Your brain's even a higher percentage of water than the overall body. So your brain depends on this. Spend the money, give your body that opportunity to have a fluid that's going to really hydrate you as opposed to toxify you. And they found also that there's over like 300,000 to 400,000 microplastics in most water. And please stop drinking bottled water. I mean, if you're going to do it, have it in glass, trust the source. But the only way you really know is get one of your own machines at home. And I have a company I work with for like 30, 40 years now, and I love. But there's other things you can do, but please check your water source, start with that. And then, be smart about the rest of it. Get the 7 to 9 hours of sleep, get some exercise in, move your body, eat some good food, eat some whole food, eat some things that are natural, that are closest to natural form as possible, and stay hydrated. And the other piece is like one other little drop of golden thing is to take Celtic sea salt that has, the 64 plus minerals in balance. You got to have it in balance. The body understands nature and nature's in balance. So you can't just go, oh, here's your 3, minerals that are going to rehydrate you. You need those, but you need the complementary package for the body to utilize it properly. So that could be as easy as putting a pinch of Celtic sea salt in your water, each glass of water. Tom Brady always put Celtic sea salt or some electrolytes in every glass of water he drank, and he turned out okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there's my pitch. There's my pitch at the end, Bernie.
That's a great message. While we're on that subject, our podcast is called "Is Breakfast Included?" And if we were having breakfast, come on, man, tell me, what would you have?
What do I have for breakfast? Well, if I'm going to so I start my day with H2 water, which is hydrogen water. I drop a tablet in water. I wait till it fizzes. Then I drink it as soon as it gets, it dissolved. And then I start with my bulletproof coffee. And my bulletproof coffee includes C8. It includes grass-fed butter and some, I actually put some cacao in there now because cacao now releases those stem cells out of the body, gets them released into your system. And so I'm using that as well. And then I'll go into, doing, somewhat of a keto breakfast, but I'll make sure if I'm not doing the eggs and bacon and sausage, some kind of a meat with some onions and mushrooms and spinach, scramble. Then the other thing that I will do, which is not as keto, but I'll do what do I want to say? Pumpkin seeds, which are pepitas. I'll do, a handful of walnuts. I'll do a handful of pistachios that are raw. These are all raw. And I'll do like a tablespoon or 2 of just some granola for crunch. So it's not too much sugar. And then I'll add yogurt, I'll use goat yogurt. I'm not big into cow dairy because I think there's too many things that impact us from the cow dairy, but goat yogurt and sheep yogurt really do kind of do okay. So I'll do the yogurt, and then I also do a scoop of calcium from Standard Process in there. That's my breakfast when I'm not doing the other.
Well, you win for the most original breakfast.
Oh, but I will go with you. I will go have breakfast if we're in town together. Let's go have breakfast. That's one of my favorite meals.
Definitely. Well, Frank,
There's only one time when it isn't, and that's when I'm doing intermittent fasting, and then I just push it to midday, and then sometimes I'll just have my breakfast midday.
Right on.
Cool.
Well, brother, it was good talking to you, and let's definitely keep in touch.
Will do.
Right on. Frank Jasper. Man, how can you help but not like the guy? It's a great movie. He's a great guy. If you haven't watched Vision Quest, you should totally check it out. It's a great movie. You can find out more about Frank on his Instagram, VisionQuest_shoot. That's SHUTE 1985. And you can check out him out online at shootshirts.com. You can pick up one of his shirts with one of the really cool scenes of the movie. Tells his story on there. It's really cool. You should check it out and support him. Like I said, always support independent creators. And of course, while you're online, go to isbreakfast.com. A little shameless plug there. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, like. You want to hit that notification button, do it. Check out our podcast, rate and review the show on Apple Podcast. And while you're there, hey, pick up one of our shirts. We don't have our beautiful image like Frank's does. Great guy. But we have our logo, and it's a pretty cool logo. If I should say so myself. All right, guys. I'm done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.